Hello, Global Gladiators. Back with Street Masters, Rise of the Kingdom. And the Pledge Manager's open. The Aftershock campaign is over. And a lot of people are asking, what should I buy? I did a whole video on how to use the Pledge Manager. I've done videos on all the fighters. I've done videos on all of the stages in the core box. So this one is specifically going to be a playthrough, giving you an idea of what comes in the Twin Tigers expansion. This is going to be the two fighters, Axel and Reese, against the Onyx League in Poison the Well. The rules we're going to use are the Revision 2 rulebook set that you can find in the files section of the Facebook group for Street Masters fans, or in the files section of Board Game Geek. And these were released by Blacklist, but there wasn't a lot of fanfare, a lot of attention given to these extra rules. So that's what I'm going to spend this video on, is giving you a full playthrough, just like I did in episode 1, telling you about all the different rules. And now here we are, episode 32. And it's going to be about all the changes, how they work, and I'm hoping that there won't be too many changes or errata from when you receive your core box or Aftershock pledge, that most of the things you'll see here will be unaffected. What are the big changes? Well, in your action step, if you take a defense action, you can get 2 tokens instead of 1. These are random tokens, so there might be better cards or other card actions or abilities that you can use instead of reverting to the basic defense step. But sometimes you just need those extra defense tokens to get some power or just to survive. And since there's no healing outside of abilities or cards or loot if you can grab it, then that defense could really affect you. So if you have no idea what I'm talking right now, the original defense step only allowed you to get 1. So now in the new rules, you can get 2. What else has been put in there? There's a lot of clarifications. They're not perfect. They're not going to be so expansive as to explain everything. So questions and things should also be referred back to Board Game Geek or the Facebook group, because a lot of the stuff that you're going to ask have already been answered, and the community will try to help you. Or you can just do a search and find the answers of things that have already been found. So where does that leave us? It also leaves us with a brand new type of arcade mode. Hyper mode. All of the fighters that you get have stories, and if you play through those stories, you can get upgrades, and those upgraded cards can be dumped into an arcade mode called hyper mode. And since the Onyx League is really difficult, this is not an easy expansion. Fighting against the Mac and the way that he functions is totally different than any other enemy. It's totally different than any other enemy that you're going to find anywhere else. And because of that, I think we just might need the little bit of extra help that hyper mode will offer. We're going to play through this in as close to real time as I can and still animate everything out. I don't know at this point if I'm going to win or not. So I've made it a much longer timeline in Premiere to hopefully get to the end. Hopefully it won't take months and months for me to get through this, and I'll get it out to you while the Pledge Manager is still going. But we're going to do a full playthrough, and hopefully we'll win. And to help us out, we're going to use Marianne to help out Axel. The reason why I'm picking Marianne is because I don't see her getting used that often. Her ability allows her to generate power, and Axel has a very, very short charging window of only 4, and every time that he flips over to his charge side, that one random defense token he would get on his normal side now doubles up. And to note, also, because it says each fighter, that's going to include the allies, since they're fighters on your side. So Marianne will also get the 2 random defense tokens. That is super awesome. That means there's a potential for getting 3 power every time that Axel flips. So if he took another hit from someone else, then he's going to stay on the side constantly. Everybody's going to keep getting 2 random defense tokens every round, and hopefully that will allow them to stand up and keep getting hits from the boss. The counterpart to Axel is Reese, and where Axel is able to constantly develop these defense tokens to keep defense going, Axel has none of that. He has no ability to heal. He has only offensive capabilities, and that's why we're going to put him with Darius. And Darius is another one of those characters I haven't seen a lot of love go to in the playthroughs I've seen, and it's kind of a shame since he allows for the targeting of each enemy within 2 spaces of him. So that's 2 on the left, right, up and down. So there's a huge spread to do much damage every round with. One of the pieces of evidence that shows how little love he got is the fact that they forgot to put the 7 in his health. Yeah, you can just write it in for now. There will be errata. People did notice it. So when the new cards come out, this will be filled in with the 7. So Reese, he gets his special cards that are the Reese's Pieces gear cards, and the more often they are out, you can only have 2 of them out at a time, then that means he'll be buffed by having those knives out. And every single round that he's doing his attacks, he can hit and then do some special moves with them. They would go to the discard and then they come back. As you can see from the charge side, if the minion he's attacking has less than 5 health, when it flips, it will automatically defeat the minion. Darius, being able to keep doing these area of effect attacks, hopefully will keep the minions below that threshold, so we can just keep knocking them out and getting a ton of loot. I hope that this will be a solid strategy for these 2, and we can keep the minions from overwhelming us. And now it's time to look at the boss that we're going to be facing. Now we have the leader of the Onyx League, Mac the Blackheart, and just so everybody knows, if you are looking to use him as a fighter, you need to get the Redemption Pack 2 add-on as part of the Aftershock experience, the campaign, and you can only get the figure if you buy Twin Tigers. So if you went looking for Redemption 2 and you watch this video and you're like, oh, blah, 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 that's where it was. Yeah, you needed to get Twin Tigers to get this stage, this boss mini, this boss deck, and these fighters. So just to reiterate, you need to get Twin Tigers. What's so special about the Mac? He hits for 4. That's not the worst. Kimono at 5 is pretty bad, so this is pretty manageable. But I thought that about Juan, who also attacked in a similar fashion, and it took hours. It was a very difficult match. 44 health with 2 fighters. It's not too bad. Again, not as bad as Kimono. Definitely not going to be as bad as Recyclord would be. So we're going to hope that he's not going to get too much in the way of defense. We'll do what we can to mitigate that. He retreats. He hits each fighter within 7 spaces. And the other issue is he causes you to discard constantly, and every time that you have to reshuffle your deck, he gets to do 3 direct damage. Now you're going to be drawing cards, and you're going to be, if you used let's have the example. If you used a fighter like Brandon, who needs as many cards as possible in his hand, or if you have Natalia who uses the stealth cards from her discard pile, the Mac is going to be devastating against them. So the new fighters that are like Axel, who can help in a similar fashion to how we were using Natalia in previous videos as a support character, is going to be super important. And you're going to need as much speed as possible, which makes Reese super important, because the faster you take him out, the less chance you'll have of going through all 24 of your cards. So that's kind of going to be your strategy. There's no real way to otherwise put cards back into your deck to avoid the shuffling. It really is just keep drawing and try to keep them in your hand. If you were to have a huge hand and a very small discard, let's say you had 20 of those cards in your hand and you only had 4 to keep shuffling through to end up in discard. During those draw phase, you'd hit it so fast that this would snowball you into oblivion. So fighters like Axel and Reese that aren't really using a lot of cards, Reese being able to keep recycling the use of the Reese's Piece instead of having to go dig for it or draw for it, is going to hopefully get us through this a lot easier. His minions in the Onyx League, as you'll see, they have a lot of effects on them. They also cause you to discard, so there's just going to be this constant discarding effect that's going to go on, and you'll have to do everything you can to keep that at bay. All right, so this is not one of the scenes from It. This is Poison the Well stage, and it looks like it is a water treatment facility and perhaps has an inlet or an outlet that connects to what I would say is maybe Ace Chemicals in the Batman world, or just the Vandal factory. If you get Aftershock, there's a lot more lore and things that will go into Vandal and other similar types of stages. So this is a good one to have, especially if you're going to get Aftershock, because that whole theming of what Vandal does to people and the different characters that are either addicted to it or use it, this kind of fits in with that. So you get a lot more story out of the play that you're going to have. And the Vandal Poison VATS card is a stage condition. We're going to throw that into play. And all of the objective tokens are inactive side up. On the reverse side, we see that the boss is going to be moving around and trying to hit all the inactive objective tokens. And if there's anything preventing the boss from attacking, instead of flipping objective tokens, they're going to get random defense. If all of the objectives are active, that means that we lose. And anytime that we need to activate this, everybody within 3 spaces is going to take 1 direct damage. Now, that's probably because the poison is going off, and we need a way to be able to deactivate these poison spewing valves. And keep in mind it says each fighter takes that damage, so that includes the very low health on our allies. So placement of those, it's going to be really difficult trying to keep them away from active objectives. Another problem with active objectives is the Vandal Poison VATS condition. When the boss is moving around, if they are unable to stand on and flip one of these, then you pull a stage card that's in addition to the stage card that you would normally pull. And for the most part, they are not helpful. One strategy that you may take is to stand on the objective tokens to keep the boss within range and to keep them from getting too far away, and you can really kite them around and prevent them from flipping anything. So that's probably the strategy I'm going to have to take. Luckily, it doesn't take a whole lot to flip the active objectives back to the inactive side. As you can see here, where the heroes start and where the boss starts, they're on opposite sides of the map, so it's going to take a good amount of time to get all the way over to where Mac's at and set him up in a way that will prevent him from getting those 3 objective tokens that are right next to him. So that's what we're going to be thinking about as we start the round, and let's get started. Looking at the map and where the enemy spawn points are, the first spawn point is right up there by where Reese is standing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Reese draw the threat card first, and hopefully between him and Darius they'll be able to clear that spot off, and when it comes to Axel's turn, that will be the next spawn point, and I can keep the minions in a tight area while I try to move towards Mac. I went ahead and I pulled my opening hand, and now is the threat phase. I pull in the crosshairs. This is bad because not only is it an event that attaches basically to the fighter and the deck, it prevents you from using your action on the character card, and it's going to last until I have completely gone through all of my cards, and I can't have more than 4 cards in my hand. So even if I try to use a tactic of pulling as many cards as possible and then just taking the damage, I would have to just discard everything back down to 4 every time. So this is a debilitating card to have. I'm guessing it's kind of in the vein of just being shot at constantly, so you have to constantly get rid of options because someone's shooting at you. So that fits with the theme of these Onyx League guys, and I hate them. I hate them because they are already getting the upper hand. So let's take a look at what cards I have and what options I've got to try to mitigate this. Since I'm not going to be able to use my regular action as often as I'd want, I really have to take a look at what actions are available from tactic cards that I can use instead. So let's look at the 2 tactics I was able to pull. So one tactic is Prowl. There are no actions on the card, so this isn't what we're gonna want right off the bat. And the next one is Knives Out. It says at the start of your turn, you get defense for each gear card you control. The gear is the Reese's Piece. And while I do have one, this action, which allows me to search my deck for a copy of Reese's Piece and put it into play, is a lot more valuable on the next turn. So if I put it out now, and then I put my card action towards Reese's Piece next time with the upgraded Reese's Piece, and I put my regular action towards this Knives Out, being able to go search for another Reese's Piece and put it into control, then I will constantly be able to fully utilize Knives Out's actions instead of the stuff I can't use without hurting myself due to the in the crosshairs card. So I'm going to opt to put Knives Out into play. And from here, I don't really have a whole lot of other options, so I'm going to use the sprint action and my movement to try to get as close to Mac as possible and start that control. Then I'll go ahead and exhaust Darius so I can move him and get him a little bit closer to Reese. Finally, there are no minions in play to worry about, and there are no cards in my threat area, so threat phase just moves on to draw phase. I'll draw a card, and now it's Axel's turn. Now we have Axel's threat phase, and he pulls Hot Lead. This is another event, and it says each fighter may discard 1 card from their hand, and then the Mac's going to deal each fighter 1 direct damage for each card in their hand. I think I'm just going to go ahead and take the 4 direct damage and keep all of the stuff in my hand for right now, and hopefully I'll be able to get some healing later to mitigate the effects of that. But right now, I think I just need everything I can in my hand in the early game because I need as many options as possible to get myself set up. Looking at my hand, Cautious Tactics looks like the best option, and then I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Marianne. I'll move her, and she's going to give 1 power to all the fighters within 3 spaces of her, which includes Axel and Reese at this point, so that helps out everybody. And then I'm going to go ahead and move. Then, since I still have an action to go and I still can exhaust the tactic I just put in play, I'm going to go ahead and use the action on Cautious Tactics, and I'm going to be able to move Axel 1 space and gain 2 random defense tokens. And then I can also exhaust the Cautious Tactics and be able to move 1 space and gain 1 random defense token. So that's going to give me 3 random defense tokens. And that leaves me with a punch, grapple, and kick. Moving on, there's nothing in my threat area, so all that's left to do is draw a card, and it will be the boss's turn. Since this is the first time that we're going to see Mac, there's probably nothing in the discards for the fighters in the first round, so he's not going to be too much of a threat. But as he continues to mill down their decks, he becomes a greater threat as the game progresses. So he's supposed to attack and retreat 4 spaces. In the rules, it says that he has to have some type of target to be engaged with, and then do some type of retreat in a straight line. He has nowhere to go because of his current placement. So the retreat rules and the attack rules are not going to come into effect. What is going to happen is he's going to make both the fighters discard, and since this is the first round, there's nothing in their discards. It won't have any effect, it won't take any damage, and he won't gain general damage or defense tokens. There are no cards in the play area either, so we're going straight to the stage phase, and the first thing we're going to do is look at the setup card. It says each fighter within 3 spaces of an active objective suffers 1 direct damage. We currently have no active objectives, so then we'll go to the next, the Vandal Poison VATS. The boss moves 3 spaces toward the nearest inactive objective, and if there is no objective in the boss's space, draw 1 stage card. So we're going to draw 2 stage cards at the end of this, but first we need to move Mac. We'll count up all the spaces and move him towards the closest one. Right now that is the blue objective up at the top, so we're going to move him. Then we'll go ahead and pull the stage cards. First one is Infected Rat. The fighter nearest an objective token places this card in their threat area, and we can't get rid of it until we discard 2 defense tokens of the same type. Every round it's going to do 1 direct damage during the threat phase. So that sucks, but hopefully with Axel's ability to generate a bunch of defense tokens, we'll eventually find 2 defense tokens of the same. Then is Vandal Addict. That is move the boss 1 space towards the nearest inactive objective. If no minions are in play, the boss gains 1 random defense token. If they had minions, then the rest of this card would come into play, but we don't have any, so it's just going to gain 1 random defense. That is going to put him onto the blue objective token, and because Vandal Poison VATS says when the boss enters an inactive objective space, flip that objective to its active side, that doesn't say activate, then do that. It is a stage condition, happens all the time, so whenever he wanders into a space, then it's going to flip. That is going to be a very difficult thing to overcome. We're going to have to try to kite him away from that space and then run around behind him and deactivate it. In order to maximize the use of Marianne, I'm going to go ahead and let Axel go first this time, and we'll draw a threat card. And Axel pulls the first minion. It's Danny Trejo in a bald cap, also known as a bolo. And a bolo there is a little bit tricky. He's going to gain 3 random defense tokens, but the tricky part about him is he's going to move forward and attack, gaining more defense tokens for every time you block. That means you have to make a decision. You can accept damage. You don't have to block every time. That also means, well, let me clarify. Your fighter doesn't have to block, but your allies do. So you don't want the allies to be anywhere near this guy because it's just going to keep feeding him. You want to have him decide to go towards the fighters instead of the allies. And the special ability of Reese to be able to defeat a minion with 5 or fewer hit points is going to be key, because in the early parts of having this guy out on the board, we're going to try to get the first round of defense tokens out and 3 additional damage, so he'll be ripe for the plucking. Now I got to look at all the cards I have in play and make a real decision. So I could use regroup and hope that 2 of the random defense tokens will be the same, and that will help out Reese in order to get rid of the infected rat. But thinking about this, I'd gain more in the long run by keeping the advantage out and pecking away at the bolo. That hopefully will allow me to do at least 3 damage, lock him in place, and let Darius hit him to bring him down the rest of the way to the 5 I need. I'm going to start everything off though with Marianne. I'm going to go ahead and exhaust her because I need that power in order to flip. Then I'm going to move up into engagement range with a bolo. That will allow me to use keeping the advantage's exhaust effect of discarding 1 defense token from an enemy engaged with me. And in addition to that, it's going to lower the number of defense tokens he has to less than what I have. And that will allow me to gain +1 to the attack. Altogether, that gives me a punch attack against a bolo, to which he has no defense tokens. So all of the damage that I'm able to do is going to go straight to his health. So I'll go ahead and roll. Got a crit. Roll again. Alright, so I did 1 damage and I got 3 punch tokens. That's not really going to help us too much, but we still have Darius to be able to do some damage, and we'll see how far we get with that. Then it looks like the last thing I can do in this phase is to exhaust Cautious Tactics, and it's going to allow me to get a random defense token for Reese, which he desperately needs. And I am going to move him just because it's part of the effect, and when he gets his turn he'll just move back, so it doesn't really affect much. Now that everything's been done that can be done, it is time for the threat phase, and Abolo is going to get to attack. His card says that he's supposed to advance 3 spaces towards the nearest fighter. His advance rules mean that since he's engaged, he's not going to go anywhere. Retreat still affects all of the enemies if they're engaged or not, but advance does not. So things get a little tricky with the move rules, and especially with stage cards, it gets really confusing with advance. It gets really confusing when they are engaged as to whether or not they should move at certain times. And I'm hoping with future clarifications and more questions coming out, there will be more discussion on it and descriptions of what people should do and shouldn't do in certain circumstances. If you have any questions on that type of thing, or any comments on anything you think I do wrong, especially when it comes to movement, feel free to comment here or in the Facebook group. We're going to roll for Abolo's attack and make some decisions. Alright, so I went ahead and just blocked everything, and I still have to take 1 damage, but what it'll allow me to do is flip over to my charge side. I can hopefully stay there as long as possible, and this maximizes my defensive abilities for every fighter by keeping Axel on that charge side. So while it does mean that Abolo is going to take 2 extra defense tokens, it also means that they're not punch tokens, So Axel's damage on the subsequent rounds still will go through, and it won't give a bolo too much extra defense, but it might mix things up with Darius and prevent Darius from doing too much damage. We'll see how that goes. So now the turn is pretty much done. I'm going ahead and draw a card and move on over to Reese's turn. And after we get Reese all reset, we're going to pull the threat card, and we get Black-Hearted Mercy. So this is a tactic for the boss, and it's going to whittle down the deck even more. So I don't think there's any way to get rid of tactics on these two characters, so this is going to be pretty rough. Oh wait, we have an interact, and it says if you're engaged with Mac, you may discard this card. So I just need to run up and hit him in the face and hopefully get rid of that card. Then the first thing I'm going to do is attack with Darius. He seems to have a ranged attack and hits within an arc of 2. That means a bolo is going to get hit, and there's no placement of Darius where I could put him that he would hit both Mac and a bolo just yet. So I'm just going to fire away for 3. And that's going to do 1 damage and get rid of some defense. So not a whole lot, but every little bit helps. So there's a couple things I know I have to do, and one of them is to play a card. I'm going to go ahead and play my Reese's Peace card, and it's not going to do a lot for me just yet, but I'm going to combo that with a couple things. Then what I want to do is to use the action that I had from previously on Knives Out, and it lets me search my deck for another Reese's Piece. So I have 2 gear cards in play, and since I have 2, it would let me attack for direct damage, but I'm nowhere that is going to help me with that. So I need to move back down, cover up the yellow objective, and kind of wait it out at this point. That's going to move us into the react phase, and the only thing in Reese's threat area is the infected rat. He's going to do 1 direct damage, and since I only have 1 grapple, I'm not going to be able to get rid of the card, and it'll be just a draw. Now we have to take care of Mac. It's the boss's turn. So he tries to attack, but he's not engaged with anyone, and then he retreats 4 spaces. And afterwards, his tactic, the Black-Hearted Mercy, is going to hit everyone within 4 spaces. Basically, that's telling us nothing's going to happen to anybody, and everybody gets a free pass, basically. Then we have to go through the stage stuff for the stage step, and the stage rules card does nothing. Then the Vandal VATS, and Mac's going to move 3 spaces towards the nearest inactive objective. He has to take a straight path, so the nearest one would be the one that Reese is standing on top of. So he's going to go straight towards it. That means he's going to land on the blue objective, and it doesn't say that if he lands on an inactive or active objective, the next part of the card triggers, so it doesn't, which means we're only going to draw 1 stage card. That stage card is another infected rat, and unfortunately we'll go back on Reese, and that's all we can do. So if you noticed at the beginning of the enemy turn, Matt kind of ping-ponged back and forth to the spot with the blue token, and I kind of want him to do the same thing, but I want him to eventually move off of that token so I can deactivate it. If I try to attack him in his current position, he'll never move off it. He'll just move off of it during his retreat of his turn, and then follow it immediately with the stage condition and end up right back on top of it. So I need to move Axel over in a direction that will cause his retreat to move down a little bit, and when he starts ping-ponging, it'll continue to go towards Reese, but stay where Reese is standing on the inactive objective token. So it won't trigger the rest of the stage conditions and keep getting direct damage. The only way to do that, as far as I can tell in my head, is to go ahead and start moving Axel around. So set everything back up, and I know I need the power from Marianne on Axel, And in the future, I'm going to be moving Axel, so I want to move her into a position where on the next turn, I think she'll be more advantageous. But before I can do that, I need to pull a threat card, and I get Taking Aim. This is another tactic for Mac, and it says while engaged with Mac, a fighter can discard 3 cards from their deck to discard this card. So I should set myself up with Axel to end my turn next to Mac and be engaged. There doesn't seem to be a timing requirement of when this can be discarded, so I'm just going to discard it as soon as I can once I get next to him. I want this attack to be in my favor as much as possible. Axel's on his charge side. That's going to let him give random defense tokens to everybody, which is perfect. First thing though, I want to use Keeping the Advantage, exhaust it, pick one of those defense tokens off of a bolo, just so I can maybe, if I don't kill him, it will hopefully allow Darius to do enough damage to finish him off by clearing off the potential of him using a defense token. So first, just because I can, start off with Keeping the Advantage, exhaust it. Then, like I said before, I'll just move Marianne into position now, so I'll exhaust her and distribute the power. And finally, with the bonus from Keeping the Advantage, I'm going to attack a bolo for 4. Still only 1 damage. Let's see the random. Okay, so I get 4 punch and a kick. Now to finish off the move, everybody gets 2 random defense tokens. We'll start with Marianne. Next is Reese. That long spinning grapple is actually going to be enough to get rid of one of those infected rats, so that's pretty cool. Finally, we got a roll for Darius. Looking at a bolo, I don't really want to give him an opportunity to gain all those defense tokens and health back. So what I want to do is Calculated Kick. I know I could wait for Darius to try to finish him off, but he's in the threat area of Axel, which means he's going to be the next thing to activate, and it's possible for him to pick up a bunch more defense tokens. I just want to clear him out. Calculated Kick is going to let me attack for 3, and I can add to the damage by using some defense tokens, which I have a lot of. So right now, it seems like the best plan. Let's see what happens. Thanks to that extra one from Keeping the Advantage, that means do 2 kick damage. He had 1 token. That brings him down to 3. And I add the 3 defense tokens into Calculated Kick to do 3 direct damage. A bolo is gone, and I get to pick a loot card. So let's see what we get. We got Smoke Bombs, so that'll help us with some mobility. If you look carefully, it says it can be used at any time. And since Mac, I need him to move off of that objective token in order for me to flip it. And since he moves on his turn, and I have no other way of getting in there, these smoke bombs are going to be crucial for me interrupting his plan and backing him into a corner so I can just keep beating him up. Now, believe it or not, with all that stuff going on Axel's turn, I still haven't used my move action yet. So I'm going to move towards Mac in such a way that I grab that loot token. And I get a flashbang, so that'll be helpful peeling off those defense tokens. I will want to point out the loot that is in Aftershock is exclusive to Aftershock. If you don't get the Aftershock box and expansion, then you don't get all the new loot cards, and those loot cards do some crazy cool new things. So just in case you weren't aware, there's new stuff in that. And since we now have a plan to corner Mac, I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Cautious Tactics in the hope that if I give a random defense token to Reese, hopefully that'll get rid of some more rats and get him a little closer to being able to do damage to Max, since he is our main damage dealer. So let's see what happens. Alright, it's not going to be enough to take out a rat, but It's going to move us through the react phase and into drawing another card. Then I'm going to discard 3 cards from the top of the deck in order to get rid of taking aim, like we discussed way back at the beginning of this turn, and it'll be Reese's turn. After we get everybody reset here, it's time to pull a threat card, and we get a yellow Felicia Salt. She's going to be interesting because she attacks each fighter within 2 spaces. If I move the way I think I can move, should be able to hold her in place along with Mac and continue to pelt the 2 of them with as much damage as possible. Hopefully she won't kill off my allies. And I just caught a mistake. Luckily, it's perfect time to fix it. I forgot that Knives Out at the beginning of your turn, if it has any gear in your play area, you get to get some random defense tokens. That's awesome. I looked back at the file and we didn't miss anything, so we can just fix it right now. And just remember, sometimes you gotta fix your mistakes. And thanks to that catch, we will actually be able to get rid of some rats, so that's good. Just so I don't forget, I'm gonna move Darius now. He's a little too far away to be able to hit anyone with his attack. Just not gonna worry about it. I'll move him so on the next turn, he'll be in a correct position to smack the minions around with that long reach of his. Then Reese himself is going to move into position, and the first thing I'm going to do is use up some cards because I'm still under the restriction of only being able to have 4, so I know I need to use 4, and I want to do one of my favorite combos. I'm going to start with a Razor Hook against Felicia. Keeping in mind though that because I have the knives, I have the Reese's Piece knives, I get +3 punch damage to all of the attacks. So this is going to be a pretty powerful attack. I got to roll and mark for the crit. Alright, so 3 damage +3 punch damage, 6 total punch damage. She has 3 defense tokens, so 3 gets through. Then we still have Razor Hook's effects of being able to play 1 card. I want to play Sweep the Leg. This is going to be a kick attack. Again, it's going to be for 2. Here's the thing though, I get 3 punch damage as a bonus from the knives because this is an attack. No matter what, Felicia's she's done. She's gone. So the real question is going to be, do we get any defense tokens? So I'll go ahead and roll. Hopefully we get some defense tokens, and then I have to resolve this one, and we'll see what card I play next, because I'll be able to choose playing a card or having a fighter draw a card. I'm going to play a card. Alright, Felicia is off the table, and I get a loot card that is an energy drink, so I can get some power soon. And I have the ability, still from Sweep the Leg, to play another card. At this point, I'm not really able to do too much else, so I want to play a tactic card I've been having in my hand for a while called Prowl. It's going to add some movement abilities and let me play some actions on the Reese's Pieces. This could be pretty useful getting around the limitation of not being able to use my basic action. We'll see. Speaking of the basic action, I still have not used it, so I'm going to use that action on the card Knives Out. It will allow me to search through the deck and put a Reese's Piece into play. Now, I have the gold upgraded one and I have a regular one. I'm not going to reanimate everything, but what I have to do is I have to replace one of these. I'm going to replace the regular one with another regular one, and it doesn't change anything on the field, and it still lets me get the bonus at the beginning of the turn. Just want to do things that way because it allows me to attack for 2 dice +3 punch damage, and the dice damage will be direct, all towards Mac. Now that's kind of nice. I got a defense and an attack. Okay, since it was direct damage, I get to choose what defense token I'm going to take. Since it looks like I'm low on kick, I'm going to take one of those. that means 2 direct damage went through, 3 punch damage went through to Mac. Finally, we're going to move into the long-awaited react phase, where we can finally get rid of these rats. They're going to do 1 direct damage each, so that's -2, and we're going to sacrifice 2 of our defense tokens. Probably going to get rid of punch and grapple, and that will get rid of the rats. There's only one thing left to do: draw a card, and the boss will take a turn. Luckily, after all that attacking, we still have 1 defense token on Mac, so all he's going to do is attack for 4 and then retreat for 4. In the middle of that retreat, I'm going to go ahead and toss a smoke bomb. So as you see the figures moving around on the board, that's what's going on. Remember, it said use it anytime. You can use loot at any time, and that's going to push me into Mac's current area, and hopefully on the next turn I'll be able to flip that back into an inactive. He hits Axel for 2 punch and 2 kick, so that'll turn into a whole bunch of power for him. Then everybody's going to go ahead and just move around as I described earlier. Finally, Black-Hearted Mercy. Everybody's going to have to discard a card. It doesn't match any of the stuff that's already in the discard pile, so that's the only effect that will happen from that tactic. Unfortunately, since we all had to move up closer to the objective that's currently active, whatever noxious fumes are coming off that thing is going to give everybody 1 direct damage. And then from the Vandal card, the boss is going to move back towards Axel, and we're going to have to pull 2 more stage cards. And the cards we pull are Faithful Underlings and City of Thralls. Faithful Underlings, each minion that does nothing. Then City of Thralls, the fighter with the least minions in the threat area. We have no minions out right now. Otherwise, it says discard and draw 1 more stage card. So what's the next stage card? Let's see. We end up with Vandal Addict. So it wants us to move the boss 1 space towards the nearest inactive objective, which it's next to. The issue with this, there is no valid place for him to move. The moving around doesn't change anything. Moving towards, he can move through the players, but he would have to be able to move 2 instead of 1 because he can't land in the space with the player. So right now, nothing is going to happen, and this card only attaches to the minions. It's like he's controlling his minions with the drugs, and it makes him a junkie. It's a cool little additional theme that's going on. We're in a good place right now, and we'll move on to the next step. The only thing I know for sure I need to do is flip over that active objective into an inactive objective. So I'm going to begin this round with Axel's turn. Beginning the threat phase, we'll go ahead and pull a card. We get a blue Abolo, and we need to roll for his defense tokens. We get 1 of each. Then I will use my action to go ahead and flip the active objective to inactive using the interact, and exhaust Marianne to put her into a better position. And finally, I'm going to play a card, regroup. That's going to let everyone heal, and I got to do a lot of rolling for random defense tokens. The first of which will be for Axel, and then Marianne. Then just to change things up, we'll go Darius. Then finish that card off with Reese. But I'm still not done moving things around with Axel. That will affect Reese. I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Cautious Tactics. That's going to let me move him 1. I'm hoping to be able to pick up that loot token and still get him into a good position on his turn. Hopefully it just gives me that extra loot. and also a random defense token. That's pretty much all I want to do right now, because if I can, I want to leave a defense token on Mac, because whenever he doesn't have a defense token, he gets an extra attack that I don't want to allow. That just leaves the react phase. Let's see what Ebolo's going to do. His action is to move to 3 spaces towards the nearest fighter and attack for 3. In our current placement, the nearest fighter is Darius. Got one more. Alright. That's 2 kicks and a punch. Darius has enough defense tokens to cover this, which means he has to block, and all of those defense tokens are going to migrate over to Ebolo. We'll finalize Axel's turn by drawing a card, and then start Reese's turn. This time I'm not going to forget to roll for the random defense tokens from Knives Out. I have 2 gear cards. Roll for 2. Then I need to go ahead and pull a threat card. That is Veronica Pepper in red. And if she gets close to you, she is a pain because she causes you to discard cards. But if you look, her health is only 6, and she has no starting punch tokens. If I can hit her one time with a charged up Reese, she goes away. So if I didn't have a charged up Reese, this would be a huge problem. But otherwise, I think it's going to be pretty simple to take her out on the next round. Then before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Darius, move him into position, and let him punch Mac in the face for 3. Now in some ways that was a great roll, some ways not so great. It did get rid of the 1 defense token that Mac had, which was kind of helping me out a little bit, but I think we'll be okay. I did at least 2 damage to him on that turn. And now from the position from where Marianne and Darius are at, I should be able to get 6 damage on him every turn just using the allies. Just a fun little aside. Some friends of my dad showed pictures of snow in northern Los Angeles County. So if you were waiting for hell to freeze over, now's your shot. Alright, back to thinking about what we're going to do here on Reese's turn. I need to move him because I want to get that loot token, but I need to also move him back to where he will be out of the way from Mac's retreat attempt, and I need to move him so that he'll be out of the way for anyone else's movement that they need to do. The first thing I want is to use cut and run, which will allow me to do 2 direct damage to Mac, which then lets me move 1 space and draw a card. So I'm going to just combine all of that into the move step. You'll see me move for 4, and then I'll pull a card and a loot card. Then I pulled that loot card of the lead pipe, and I might as well just use it now, and I'll just go ahead and deal 3 direct damage to the boss. And I'm going to use the card action again for Knives Out like we've been using all this time. At this point though, there are no Reese's Piece cards in the deck. They're in the discard or in play, but we can still search, because it just says search your deck for it. It doesn't have any rules about if you don't have one in there. So we're just going to attack. We're going to roll for 2 and get 3 punch extra damage. So that's 2 damage, and with the crit I get to pick a defense token. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick grapple. Since I don't have anything to exhaust, it pretty much ends my turn, and I will move to the react phase. Veronica Pepper, she's gonna move then attack, but there's no one within 3 of her, so she's just gonna move 3 spaces. Then I'll draw a card, and it'll be the boss's turn. I want Axel to keep playing the tank, so Mac will attack him for 4. And then retreat. And my 2 regular fighters have to discard 1 card each from their decks. One of those cards matches a card already in the discard pile of Axel, so he will take 1 damage. It's general damage, so he can block it, and that also means Mac gets 1 random defense token. Then I think I forgot to talk about it, but Black-Hearted Mercy will trigger, and we need to discard a card. It's only going to affect the fighters that can discard cards, so Darius and Marianne are safe. Unfortunately for both Axel and Reese, the discarded cards match things in their discard pile. This late in the game, this becomes more important, and they're going to have to get rid of defense tokens. In case anyone was wondering, these are discarded and not blocked, so they do not become power. Then we're going to move on to the stage turn, and the stage rules, though they would activate, there are no active tokens on the map right now, so it doesn't affect anything. So that goes over to our good old trusty Vandal Poison VATS, and that will cause the boss to move forward again, and we're going to pull 2 stage cards. For the sake of demonstration, let's resolve these one at a time. The Vandal Addict is going to ask to move the boss, but there's nowhere for him to move. Doesn't matter. We do have a minion in play, which says attach this card to the minion nearest an objective token. Right now that is a Bolo, and he'll get +1 attack, and every time he activates he gets more defense tokens, but also suffers damage. So it's not the end of the world. I really could just wait for him to eventually overdose on Vandal, but we'll see how that goes. The next card is a little trickier. Faithful Underlings will allow the minions to flip some of our inactive objectives to active. That would be a huge problem if we didn't have everybody clustered around an inactive objective that is basically being protected right now, and we have the boss cornered so that he'll just constantly move back and forth in the same track. Careful planning is the only thing that saved us. This card, if it comes out and a bunch of minions on the board, that means you could lose the game just because the card came out. So proper planning, stick to the plan. That's what hopefully will keep us going. I'm gonna go ahead and get Reese reset here, and I'll have to roll to get his Knives Out tokens. And with so many defense tokens sitting on Reese, hopefully we'll be able to get rid of our unfortunate in the crosshairs this round. I'll go ahead and pull a threat card. I get a green Abolo, and I need to roll for his defense tokens. I'm going to go ahead and use up the energy drink so that I can flip to the charge side, and then I'm going to have Darius attack for 3. The way that his card is written, it should be 1 roll, and it will do the same types of damage to everybody. So Mac and Veronica will both be hit with the same types of attacks. That was actually so successful that I think I need to change my whole strategy of what I wanted to do with this turn. I still want to hit someone with Reese's charge side, but I don't necessarily think it needs to be a minion. He's going to get 3 dice. He's going to get +1 direct damage for the 2 gear cards, and then he's going to get +3 for having the Reese's Piece bonuses in play. That's quite a lot, and Mac doesn't have much in the way of punch defense, which means I have the potential to do a crazy amount of damage to him in 1 hit. I think I have to do that. So we'll go ahead and start by rolling for the attack, and then we'll figure out what's next. Alright, I got a crit, 2 hits, so that's 3 hits and 3 punch defense tokens. So all that is super cool. It brings the boss down to 16 health, which hopefully I can get rid of in 1 or 2 more rounds, and I hope that the minions won't be able to do too much damage to me while I'm pelting away on the boss. But we have things to consider. We just did some damage, and we got some more tokens, and we used our regular action while in the crosshairs was in play. Now I only have 8 cards left, and from the look of it I need 13, if I'm reading this right, discards, so I'm going to have to shuffle. Okay, when you shuffle, you got to look back at Mac, his card, because now he's going to do some damage. So now that I'm at about half health, but I still have a move step, well, I'm going to go ahead and use it, and I still have a card action, so I'm going to use that too. I'm going to try to chain a combo using this upgraded Sweep the Leg card. Veronica, has some kick defense, so she doesn't have any punch defense. I'm hoping I'll be able to chain this into being able to play another card. Alright, that's enough to take out Veronica, and I add a kick defense. With this Sweep the Leg, since there are no ready enemies engaged with me, I get to play a card and choose a fighter to draw a card. I've spent so much time keeping my hand size down, I'm just going to use it on Reese himself. And the card I want to play is Flanking Step, which is a tactic. If you notice, it does not have a star, so hey, I get to put all three in place, and at the start of my turn, basically it's going to double my movement, and I can exhaust to draw a bunch more cards or deal damage to enemies I'm engaged with, which is great. Then, as another quick bit of housekeeping, because Veronica was defeated, I get a loot card, and it's Brass Knuckles. It's great that it's for a punch attack, since that's what Reese uses. I should be able to use this next turn. That turn had a lot going on, but one last thing for me to do is exhaust Prowl for 2 movement, just to move out of the way of a Bolo. But his green twin brother is going to run at me and attack for 3. Fortunately, I can block all of them. Unfortunately, he gets all of them on his card. It's still my turn though, and that means I can exhaust. So I'm going to exhaust Flanking Step and get rid of one of those that he picked up. It's general damage, so you get to pick what type of damage you do. And I just got rid of a punch one because it's the most advantageous to me. I already pulled my card. Let's go to Axel's. Now that Axel's all reset, I pull a threat card, and it is a blue Felicia Salt. My plan is to do enough damage to Mac to where she won't activate. First up, I'm going to attack with dropping guard, and that will allow me to attack for 4. Got a crit, and another crit. 4 damage and 2 punch tokens. Then I'm going to do my basic attack for 4, and everybody gets 2 random defense tokens. Got another crit. Alright, so that's 5 damage, 2 punch tokens, and then I need to start rolling for the random ones. That was Axel, now Marianne. Then I need to roll for, let's give this one to Reese. And finally, we'll roll for Darius. Finally, we're going to let Marianne hit someone in the face. So she's going to attack for 3, and everybody's going to get some power. And I think that's going to be it, everybody. I'm going to jump over to the boss's side, and I'm going to show you it's not possible for him to win. As you can see, he's down to 5 health. He's got no tokens of any kind. Which basically means no matter what on the next turn, Reese is going to punch him and kill him. And that's all you need to do to finish this. Just beat the boss. There is no combination of attacks that the minions can do that will in any way defeat the amount of tokens available to the heroes. So, game's over. If you got any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to voice any on my YouTube page or in the Facebook group. I'll answer whatever I can, keeping in mind I'm not a member of Blacklist, so anything that the Saddler say or Blacklist says overrules anything that I say as far as this game, but you can do whatever you want in your game. If you can, subscribe, like, those help the channel grow. I am about 10% of the way to being able to monetize, which would be awesome. But, you know, hey, maybe you want to, maybe you don't. There's a full playlist of all of my Street Masters content, all of the fighters, and all of the core stages at the very least are included with write-ups on how to set them up and ideas how to use them. That's why we're successful here. I follow the same strategies I talked about in those videos. Alright guys, have a good one.